Hey, I think we're actually live this time. Hey everyone, Yang Yan Zhao. Tonight is a special late night edition of the show. We have a guest who is getting ready in the back room, possibly quaking in her boots with all the terror from the horror that we will be talking about. We will broadcast into the witching hour, and which is good because we will talk about some witches. But before that, let's have a little talk about Empire of the Undying Sun, which is my current Kickstarter. Empire of the Undying Sun is a campaign guide for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition and 1st edition. You get about 450 pages of a glorious campaign setting and various modules. We have fantastic arts by the likes of Peter Gilmore, Rod Looper, Anghor Kang, Empire of the Undying Sun. You have something strange happening in the woods, zombie invasions, swashbuckling pirate adventures into a land of the Empire of the Undying Sun, where you have jungles teeming with life that wants to devour your flesh, and howling spirits in the nights on the windswept deserts. Many ancient ruins, rife with magical items or perhaps death, culminating in a visit to the Black Pyramid, a mega dungeon so large that it reconfigures itself. And there, your players will have to make a decision that may change the world. We've got a new character class, the Empath. We have the Dream Realm, where your players can enter the dreams. Unfortunately, there are also some nightmares in the dreams, which may haunt your players in their waking lives. Or perhaps your players will learn how to be somebody else's boogeyman. Empire of the Undying Sun is going on now through October 30, just in time for Halloween. We are currently about 78, 79% fill on the backing. So let's back that, if you would, please. And now, a very special guest, a woman who takes Halloween very seriously, editor, writer, expert horror crafter, Kat Rocha.
Good evening, everyone. And no, I am not quivering out of fear. I am quivering in anticipation for Empire, for your game. I mean, I've been waiting for it for what, 2-3 years now?
Forever.
Yeah, forever. I mean, no. Seriously, folks. I had the great honor of being one of the test players for this at the and though I had to drop out fairly early into the game, I had so much fun with the very beginning of the module. And also Yang has been very kind to ask me to look over uh, the game, and you'll have to forgive me, people. I'm a little tired at the moment, so I'm not very articulate. But basically, I've been looking over it and editing it, and it is just so amazing and so much fun. I haven't had this much fun in a D&D module since second edition. I mean, seriously.
Ooh, that's
So
great.
so I cannot sing the praises enough. If you're not backing this yet, you need to do it today, do it now, do it before you make your wallet cry if you need to. You need this in your life, seriously. Okay, I'm done shilling, but it's all true. It's all true.
Well, thank you very much. So, Kat,
Yes.
I was thinking of topics for
Hmm.
Horror Month, and it had me thinking of ancient and strange gods. And one of the ones that came to mind early was Egypt. I think that once you get towards Greece and ancient Rome, it's more or less like normal people with psychological issues who have lots of powers. Whereas ancient Egypt, it really did seem a lot more strange. What is it about ancient Egypt's long history in religion that sort of tickles your fancy?
Oh, what makes it tickle my fancy? That's a very good question because you're absolutely correct. The Greek slash Roman deities, they're very human, they're very relatable. And they have family quarrels, you
Hmm.
have family disputes. And even when you go even farther north and you get to the Norse gods, it's like you're reading about a noble family rather
Yeah.
than actual deities. So they're incredibly relatable. Where the Egyptians are not so much. What I found fascinating about them is, uh, yeah, they were completely different than what I had been taught about the Greek or Roman deities because I had first been taught about them. And then how, if you read actual stories from Egypt and even from Greece, they will reference each other's deities. They will say
Hmm.
things. It's like, yes, my god Thoth, you know him as Hermes. He told me XYZ. Or and even in the Egyptian stories, there's a story where Osiris, when he is murdered for the first time, yes, he gets murdered multiple times. When he's murdered the first time by his brother Set, Set puts his body in a log and shoves it down the river, and it floats into Greece. And the Greeks find the log, not knowing that there's a dead god in it, and they use it as one of the pillars of their temples. And Isis has to go to Greece and say, "Hey, can I have my husband back?" And but the fact that they actually talk to each other and relate their deities to one another, and it doesn't step on anybody's toes, and nobody gets mad and say, "Yo, you're a heretic." They just accept it as it is, and I just found that fascinating.
Yeah, that is kind of an interesting thing. I mean, clearly the Roman and Greek gods are like, they're not quite the same, but they're almost the same. And there's a lot of overlap if you look into like Slavic gods, and um, I believe Odin was supposed to be Mercury. Um, yeah, I think that's who they said he was. But a lot of it could be perhaps said to be in based on older cultures. But I'm kind of wondering, when I look at the Egyptian stuff, not to say that they don't have any corollaries, but they almost seem different. Like from the origin, especially the older ones. Um, and I know that you're absolutely right. They do sort of start to dovetail with the Greek stuff. Do you think that was the people of ancient Egypt and ancient Greece saying, "Oh, well, our gods must be like universal, and therefore they must be that," or is it sort of more of a Bronze Age idea where, um, you sort of take these gods into your pantheons as you conquer new areas?
Um, Something like that. One thing to keep in mind is Egypt was for a very long time the hub for trade and for travel. If you needed to get anywhere, you went through Egypt. So as a result, yes, you did kind of have this melting pot. The Egyptians admittedly did borrow a lot from the Babylonians and the Sumerians, and you can see that in a lot of their reliefs. But then they also put their own spin on it. Um, but as far as in relation to the Greeks, I always saw it as more of um, in an attempt to get your message across, or an attempt to say, hey, here's something we have in common. So because the stories that I've read, their own tales that were contemporary at the time, they do that more like saying, well, hey, I had a message from my God. Oh, you would call him this. But, and it's like, oh, okay, I understand. My God told you XYZ. Got it. Okay. And so it's more of a way to communicate or get messages across.
Hmm. Um, yeah, yeah, I totally agree. So I am kind of curious too, with um, evil gods. Um, in a lot of ancient religions, like, for example, in the Greeks, Hades wasn't really evil per se. He just ruled over the land of the dead. But it seems in Egyptian Egyptian mythology is pretty fluid
Mhm.
since it changes over a couple thousand years.
Yeah.
But it seems at certain points there were gods that were malicious and evil. Um, and I'm kind of curious, uh, does there always need to be evil gods? Do people of that time need those sort of evil figures to personify bad things in their lives, or is there something a little more to it, do you think?
I'm gonna say the Egyptians really only had one entity that, from my understanding, now I'm not an expert, but from my understanding of their text, they only have one deity or one entity that is evil. And no, it's not Set, it's Apep or Apophis.
Hmm.
Apophis is the giant snake that dwells in the underworld and wants to eat the sun. And strangely enough, it is Set who is our protector against Apophis. Set is the only one strong enough to fight him off every night. Um, but with that said, Set is a raging asshole. No, no, seriously. Set to give these stories, Set is angry not only that his brother Osiris has been named, ruler of heaven and earth, but that he got Isis, their sister, as his wife, and Set really wanted Isis. So hence he killed Osiris the first time, and then declared himself a ruler of heaven and earth. And Isis went, got Osiris, brought him back to life. Osiris took the throne again, and there was much rejoicing. And Set is even more angry about this. So he not only chops Osiris up into tiny little pieces, he scatters them across the globe. And Osiris's member goes into the Nile and is eaten by a fish. And the fish is actually Dagon, by the way, for those of you who like
Ooh.
Lovecraft. So that is actually why the Nile is so fertile, because his member remains in the Nile. Isis was able to put the pieces back together, but couldn't fully bring him back to life. So Osiris went into the underworld, and now he is the ruler of the underworld. But that leaves now Earth, who is going to rule Earth. And Set says, well, my brother is dead. I'm going to rule. And Horus goes, no, no, I am my father's son. I am now going to rule. And there's no way in hell Set is going to allow this young upstart to take his rightful place. So he kidnaps the boy and makes him humble, to put it in words. And but Horus was smart enough to capture Set's seed before it entered him,
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
and went to his mother, and his mother chops off the hand, chops off Horus's hand, and throws it into the reeds, and then grows him a new hand so that he is now clean and whole. And I'm sorry, I'm laughing because the next part's kind of funny. Um, Tells him to go bring his uncle Set a plate of salad, of which he has jizzed on himself. and feeds it to his uncle, and his uncle eats it. And then they go in front of the council and to make their pleas of I should be ruler. And Set says, I should be ruler because I have bent this boy over and he is just a boy and I have made him humble, and I can prove it because my seed will answer from inside of him. And so he calls to his seed, but his seed doesn't answer from within Horus, it answers from the reeds. And so then the council goes to Horus, and Horus says, I should be ruler because I am my father's son, and I have bent him over and I have made him humble. I will now call to call to my seed within Set, and which it responds. So that's how Horus became the ruler of Earth. And Set is kind of mad about it. But you see, Set's a kind of an asshole. He's a major asshole, but he has a place. And that's how it is with a lot of the deities of the Egyptians is they are mean or they are terrible, but they have a place. Like
Mhm.
Sekhmet. Um, the people of Earth get unruly. They stop uh, giving the gods their proper due. They start breeding like animals. They start living like animals because the earth is just too bountiful. And so Osiris actually calls forth Sekhmet and says, take care of a tenth of humanity. Sekhmet is the lioness headed goddess, but she goes into a blood rage. She gets off on killing people. And so she just loses her mind and just starts killing people willy-nilly to the point where the Nile runs red with blood and humanity is all but completely wiped out. And finally, all of the gods basically dogpile on her to get her to stop. And humanity that's left goes, okay, point taken. We'll give you your due. Don't set her on us anymore. and and they bind her up, and basically they don't want to get rid of Sekhmet because they may need to unleash her again, but they're kind of terrified of her. So Sekhmet takes on a different aspect, and depending on what era you're in and what area of Egypt you're in, she either becomes Bast or sometimes she becomes Hathor. But
Hmm.
Bast being the Egyptian goddess of cats and pleasure, or she becomes Hathor, which is a very much so mother figure.
Interesting.
Uh, so just those two as examples of they don't really have evil, it's more they recognize the good and the bad. But
Um, so I am kind of curious because in modern literature and modern thinking, and I use the term modern like a little bit loosely. Um, you have like Robert E. Howard, Lovecraft, where ancient Egyptian stuff is always very mysterious
mhm.
and there's always evil whatnots stemming from it. What do you think brought that on? Why would people have that view of ancient Egyptian society or religion?
um because in short, they love religion. Their idea of religion is not our idea of religion. Our idea
Mhm.
of religion is, the God is to be revered. He is to be put on high, or it's the Greeks where they are above us and they can mess with us at any time. They are something other than us. Um, the Egyptians, though their gods, of course, were above humanity. To be a priest, your job is to make sure that the gods are happy. It's not, I am giving reverence to the gods. It is, okay, this god likes wheat cakes on every Thursday. I need to make sure he has wheat cakes every Thursday. That was their job. But they didn't talk about it very much. We only know this because we have writings and texts
Mhm.
now, but they didn't talk about it. So what happened behind closed doors in the temples, in the not public areas, did seem very secretive and very, quiet. You don't want to talk about this. The other thing is that their religion was very much so beholden to a calendar in
Mhm.
which 5 days out of the calendar are not on the calendar because you can't tell the gods that these days exist.
Oh,
So
interesting.
there's secrecy everywhere. There's secrecy even from the gods. Um, and these are days of revelry and fun and everything, but you don't want the gods to know that you're having fun because they might want to join in or they might tell you to stop it. So no, you can't put these days on the calendar. Um, but that's a big part of it. The other is that yes, a lot of the text that we have is from temples, not temples, from well, it is from temples, but from tombs.
Mhm.
And so a lot of our knowledge of their ancient rites and their ancient secrets gets locked away in tombs, or it's only a certain class of people that has access to this information, primarily the embalmers. So you have
Yeah.
to be of a certain class or of a certain sect in order to have access to this information. So therefore, again, it's very secretive. So,
Yeah, yeah, that was one thing I think a lot of people don't realize in the modern world, just how secretive what we might consider everyday things to have been. Like if you know how to cut the secrets of cutting stone correctly, like
mhm.
you sure as hell did not tell anyone else because you're the only one who could do it, so you can make a lot of money, and then your kid is going to learn how to do it and make a lot of money, and that's going to be his trade and his path. And the priestly class was like that too, where in general it was passed down, through the family, and you sure as hell wanted to be that intermediary between the gods and the average people because you need a spell to make the god forget you drank his wine instead of leaving it for the offering. Well, guess what? You got to give me a little cash.
Pretty much. I mean, I know the my knowledge of Chinese mythology. Now I know that one
Mhm.
also spans several thousand years, but my knowledge of Chinese mythology, you have a lot of that too. Where with the Egyptians, they also came up with the idea of facsimiles.
Mhm.
A mock-up of something is just as good. Well, I'll put water in it instead, and it's just as good as wine.
Yep.
They won't know the difference. So, you get fun things like that. Also, I'm gonna play a fun game. I have with me right here the Egyptian calendar, which
Oh.
says what rites should be done, or if your a particular day is a good day or a bad day. So, like for instance, my own birthday, it says very adverse. It is the day of causing the heart of the enemy of Ra to suffer. Anyone born on this day will not live. Do not listen to the singing or what. Do not listen to singing or watch dancing on this day. So, on my birthday, I would have been killed. So, so, if unless you don't want to, dox yourself, give me a day, that to look up, and I will tell you, what the Egyptians say for that day.
I will send it to you in the private chat there.
Okay. Alright. Let me turn to that page. By the way, this is out of the book Ancient Egyptian Magic by Bob Breyer. I have seen Bob Breyer speak in person. Bob Breyer has the distinction of being the only person to embalm a body using the ancient texts and using the tools of ancient Egypt. And I have seen
Cool.
that body, and if you told me that he had pulled it out this body and it was 3,000 years old, I totally would have believed you because it looked like it. It did not look like it
Wow.
was a a donated cadaver. So let's
Wow,
see
that's
here.
cool.
Okay. Very favorable. The great and little Enid come forth from the chaotic waters of none. Make offerings of bread and beer. Burn incense. It is important. So you will have a good day. Just make sure you give bread and beer and burn incense.
Okay, I can do that.
Okay.
Um, I'm kind of curious because, as you mentioned, the ancient Chinese, they were all about rituals.
Mm-hmm.
There was literally the book of rituals. Confucius himself, he was what they called a ruist, and a ruist was the kind of priest that would perform the rituals or prescribe the rituals. And Confucius was actually kind of a loser who couldn't keep a job because he
Okay, that's
kept
funny.
well, he was. I mean, if you look at his own stories, he's bouncing around from kingdom to kingdom because he
Ah,
basically keeps telling the kings that, hey, you're not doing this right. Um, which usually doesn't go over well. Um, but they really did believe that rituals would keep the gods appeased, which means everything would be peaceful. But how do you think they came up with like the specific rituals um and sort of like the timing for them? So for example, I must offer beer and bread on my birthday. um why must they crush your heart as the enemy of Ra on your birthday? Like what do you think led to, it can't be someone like, this is a good day for crushing your enemy. Like something must have caused them to say, oh, today is the day.
well, the offering of food and drink is universal throughout all of humanity. I mean, you offer cake to the Fae, in
Mhm.
the British Isles. So I think what a big part of it is the idea of humans from our infancy as a species understood sacrifice and understood if and understood bartering. Now I know I don't want to put it in those terms because it sounds very crude, but for a lot of religions, you are appeasing or you are pleasing or
Oh,
you are
yeah.
flat out bribing um, entities that are otherworldly, to give you a favorable outcome for one thing or another. So that's a very crude answer. I wish I was an anthropologist and I could give a better one. I can say though that I do find it very interesting how much the um, Chinese mythology and Egyptian mythology um, are very similar to each other,
Yes.
right down to the offering of facsimiles of
Mhm.
worldly things so that you have them in the next life. The I know with the Chinese, you have paper money that you can
Mhm.
burn. Was it dead money? Is that what it's called? Or
Yeah, paper everything, cat.
yeah, paper
They
everything.
they
They've got
I my friend sent a picture, he bought a paper iPhone 17 Max, for his grandpa who just died.
oh wow, so that grandpa can have an iPhone.
Yeah.
And like I know that you can buy mansions for
Mhm.
your loved ones that have passed.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a wonderful story that I read, that she gets trapped in the other world, and somebody from the living world uh, burns a statue of a horse for her so that she can
Mhm.
have this horse in the spirit world. And the Egyptians, they had something similar. They don't burn it, but you are buried with them. Most
Yep.
famously being King Tut. They found an entire boat. It wasn't even a facsimile of, it's an entire boat was buried with him, along with a chariot and all sorts of other things. So I thought that was interesting that's a similarity. The other is that in the Egyptian mythology, now again, this is over several thousand years, so they don't always have this, but they have the idea of your spirit being split between the Ba and the Ka.
Hmm.
Your Ba stays here on Earth and hangs out in your tomb, goes and visits your family, other things like that. Maybe even like whispers advice to the family in their dreams. Where the Ka goes off to the spirit world, and I recently, like within a year or so ago, found out that the Chinese have something similar where
Hmm.
your spirit can be split and half stays here on earth and the other goes on to the spirit world. So that I thought was very interesting.
Yeah. Well, Chinese, they technically have 5 souls.
Oh, okay. See, like I said, I'm not an expert on the Chinese. I'm
Yeah,
only
but yeah, one of them after death heads on out.
Mhm. So, but yeah, it's very interesting the similarities between the two. Also, the value of gold is
Mhm.
very important with both peoples, where gold isn't so much as important if like the Greeks or the Romans or other peoples. I mean, yes, gold is valuable, but for them, it's the value of the metal itself. They don't have a spiritual
Yep.
meaning to it like the Egyptians did.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that. It makes me wonder: was there some sort of prehistoric trade, or was there a migration at one point, or is it just simply that the both societies sort of develop from around more or less the same time? And is it that they're dealing with the same kind of problems? So you see some of the same solutions coming up again?
I think it's more, I think trade routes existed a lot longer than a lot of anthropologists want us to believe. There's a lot that anthropologists have a horrible problem with humanity mingling. They
Hmm.
really like the idea of everything existing in a vacuum.
Yes.
But if you look at where Egypt is compared to where Sumeria, Babylon are, and then you notice that you know Asia is just right there. So it's only logical that if people were to go, south into Egypt and west into, Greece, of course they're going to go east into, China and
Hmm.
the rest of the Middle East. So it makes sense for similar ideas to be carried everywhere and then grow and developed and and then as civilization grows, things remingle. We have these wonderful accounts from a Greek uh, uh, tourist. It's basically a travel log. I love the fact that so much of what we know about the ancient world is because you have people from all these different cultures. Their job was to do a travel log, was
Yep.
to go and sample the food and sample the culture of a exotic peoples and write about it and send it back home. And this Greek tourist did get to China and did
Oh,
get, yeah,
interesting.
they got to China, they even got to India and then came back. So it it's only logical that other peoples, of course, made the same trek. By the way, it's because of, I don't know his name, unfortunately, but it's because of him that we have the misunderstanding that has led to corpse medicine. um, he wrote that they used the mummies from Egypt for medicine. That is not
Oh.
what they used. It's a mistranslation. They used the resin from the different seas.
Hmm.
from the like the Black Sea and
Yeah.
the Red Sea. They used the resin from there, but the word used sounds a lot like the word like natron, which is a substance that the Egyptians used to make their mummies. So other people thought, oh, he must have meant they were using ground up mummies, not ground up resin. And that started this whole rush to go and get mummies for medicine.
Yeah, yeah. I remember that being quite a thing for a while, especially Europeans. But as you were mentioning trade routes, I don't know if you know, but there was a Neolithic settlement in what is now Western China.
Mhm.
It's in the desert, but at that time, it would have been plains, grasslands. And they did DNA samples, and they were Caucasian. And they
Oh,
had some artifacts. One was very interesting. Is they had a conical hat made of, I'm not sure if it was felt or something like felt, but it basically looked like a witch's hat. Uh,
oh, really?
yeah, and it was in Western China. So to me, I think there was a lot of colonizing going back and forth.
Hmm.
Uh, especially during different ages when weather patterns were different, like the deserts weren't as impassable as they later became. So it wouldn't surprise me, if a lot of stuff is um, picked up from one of those civilizations or the other.
I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, I know that oh, my husband Ishi would know better than I, but I believe it's the Babylonians had an outfit to worship, again, bringing back Dagon,
Hmm.
whereas you become a fishman. And the way the hat for this outfit looks, it's supposed to look like a fish with its mouth open, and the fish
Hmm.
is kind of looking skyward. They have been able to successfully trace that design to the Pope's hat.
Yeah, I've heard that recently. I'm not 100% convinced, as I have not looked into the history of Pope headwear, but it could be. You never
Yeah,
know.
yeah, papal millinery is not really something to study.
Yeah, yeah. But it would make sense because there's a lot of other things like royalty will sit on a throne, and the throne always has I can't think of the word for it. I used to know it. But basically the chair itself is raised off of the floor a
Dais.
little bit. And popes have that.
Mhm.
And there's all sorts of uh all sorts of things where maybe it did start off as a religious thing that you wouldn't think about it, but it just became sort of standard. Like saints always have halos. Well, the halos came from a sun behind the head. Well, okay, well, who's got a sun behind the head? That came from Egyptian icon, iconography. That's the word I'm looking for. Excuse me.
No, yeah, definitely, especially because the idea is that the Pope, of course, is God's messenger here on Earth. The sun is a classic symbol of
Mhm.
you know godly power and gifts. And then going back to the Egyptians, that goes back to specifically the cult of Amun Ra, which
Mhm.
I can go on a rant about that if you wanted. But Amun Ra being the short time that the Egyptians were a monotheistic culture rather than a polytheistic.
Yeah, so I did have. It's funny you mentioned that because I did have questions about cults.
Mhm.
So what do you think makes it so that um, cult like that would form? Like in modern day, we would say that there's a cult leader who's kind of crazy, and he gets weak-minded people or people with like problems. But do you think it was the same thing back then? Or was there some other reason why they would want to go from many gods, which I guess seems easy in some ways, to like, okay, we're just going to worship this one and he's going to be the god of everything?
Actually, for the Egyptians, it's incredibly easy because their reason for changing is not what you would normally think, but it makes total sense. Pharaoh Akhenaten, who you look at his statues and he is majorly inbred. He's got very feminine features. He may have even been a hermaphrodite. He's got
Ooh.
woman hips. There's even some question as to whether or not he was actually able to sire children or not. Um, and he definitely has the missing chin
Hmm.
to so he is majorly inbred. He is the one who changed the Egyptians pretty much overnight. He said, I am Pharaoh and I have declared that this is now going to be. And he wiped out all of their other gods and switched them to worshiping Amun Ra, the name coming from one god Amun and the other god Ra. He combined them together and he said, Amun Ra is now our only god, and his light shines only for me and my family. And all of you, you are going to toil in the soil, and you are going to do what I tell you to do. And you do not get to go to the afterlife because you are just dirt people. And Amun Ra is just for me and my wife Nefertiti and our children. Um, yeah, that went over very well.
Yeah.
uh, and he died. And here's where history gets kind of wonky. We know his wife Nefertiti ruled as pharaoh. She declared herself pharaoh in his stead. But there's another pharaoh in there in between her and him
Hmm.
that a lot of people say is her posing as a man, but others say no, it's one of their children who didn't live very long. I am more inclined to say that it's her posing as a man and then finally saying, screw it, no, it's me. It was, haha, it was Nefertiti all along. Um, and she ruled. And then their son, Tutankhamun, he came into power. And that's why he didn't last very long because they were trying to get him to switch Egypt back to being polytheistic. And as he got older, he was having his own ideas and thinking, no, 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 I think my father had this right idea that, the sun shines only for me and not for any of the rest of you. And that's why he was murdered.
Interesting. I, I don't know if you've heard this theory, but there's a part in the Bible, which I can't remember where. It must be like Exodus or just after, where it mentions. So Moses' brother Aaron, um, he the Pharaoh had requested some priests be sent to Egypt, and I believe the timeline lines up where this is kind of around that time where Egypt flirts with monotheism. Do you now clearly the two groups would have known each other, and it seems as though they had positive after the whole Exodus thing, uh, the whole 10 plagues. They had somewhat of a positive relationship, especially in the region. So do you think maybe the Jews, the ancient Jews, with their kind of monotheistic beliefs had any influence on the Egyptians, or just total coincidence?
I'm not going to say coincidence, but I'm also not going to say that their influence was on the religion, because it is pretty well established that Akhenaten was pissed that basically nobody really considered him to be worth a damn. I mean, yes, he became pharaoh, obviously, but uh, he is not the uh, poster child for what you would think a pharaoh should look like or be like. He's very, if you were to put him into somewhat modern terms, think of him as Kaiser Wilhelm,
Ooh.
where, yeah, where, Wilhelm, he was crippled. I think he had a speech impediment. He had all sorts of problems. And when he came to power, oh, damn, did he make up for it. That's Akhenaten. So
Hmm.
also there's a lot to suggest that um, changing things to monotheism wasn't his idea. It was actually Nefertiti's. But there's a lot to suggest that doesn't mean that that really was what the situation was. Um, so and there were other, monotheistic peoples of the time. Yes, mostly cults or small religions. Nothing, huge or mainstream.
Hmm.
So the idea of monotheism wasn't all that uh, foreign to them. Plus, the Egyptians have a history of swinging back and forth between, you know, we must appease all of the gods equally, or this one god is the main one that we're all going to focus on. Like Osiris was often a very popular one, but even Set was a very popular one to
Hmm.
put all the focus on. In fact, Seti the First, whom the Great Pyramid was built for. He was named after Set because Set at the time was the god to appease. So.
That makes sense. So bringing it sort of into the writing slash literary realm.
Mhm.
Um, to me, one of the problems that a lot of writers have with religion in general, but particularly religions like this, I mean, this is more or less Bronze Age into Iron Age, um, but they never really get their minds in the headspace of the people at the time. Because my theory has always been a lot of this stuff makes a lot more sense if you're thinking about it like a person in ancient Egypt would have.
Mhm.
So if someone were going to write about a religion that's inspired by or based on ancient Egypt, like what sort of tips and or tricks would you give?
I would say first establish where your civilization is in their evolution, or where they are in the pecking order of the world. Um, Again, a lot of Egypt benefited from the fact that it was one of the major trade hubs. It always had been a trade hub, strangely enough. Before, okay, brief history. Major condensing here, so I know I'm glossing over a lot, but even when Egypt was split up to amongst a bunch of different city states and a bunch of little villages that actually did have their sole purpose being we're here to worship these particular gods, or they'd have their own little cults and their own little sects. Um, Going south down the river or down the Nile, they were doing trading with the Ethiopians. Now they called them the mongrel people, and they called them, slightly better than animals. They were the Egyptians were were delightfully racist in that that they really did not like the other peoples, and they even have it in their own history that they escaped out of the desert, to found Kemet, Egypt, on the banks of the river. And that the only people that they thought were even vaguely worth dealing with on their own continent were the Ethiopians. But that was the thing, even from the very beginning, they were trading with other peoples, and then they were sending those goods up to the north of the Nile. I'm using those terms because when the Egyptians talk about their land, they have it in regards to which way the Nile is flowing. So for them, Upper Egypt is
Hmm.
north
South.
and Lower Egypt is yeah, Upper Egypt is south and Lower Egypt is north. So, that's how they denote, so it gets a little confusing, so I'm specifically using compass points so that it's easy for normal people to understand. But when they're sending goods up, they were dealing and doing trade, again, with the Babylonians, the Sumerians, the beginnings of the Greeks, from their infancy. So they were always trading with people, and as a result, um, that melting pot helped to inform what are our gods going to be like? What is our religion going to be? And you get a lot of confusing uh, uh, interpretations of the gods until Upper and Lower Egypt get merged into one kingdom. And the pharaoh at the time, please forgive me, I don't remember what his name is. He says, "You know what? It's all canon. Who cares?" And from there, they're able to sift out what of their own religion they want to keep. So,
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah,
so,
it's
so to bring it back to your question, is your people going to be isolationists and their religion develops because they were isolated and it could grow on its own? Or did they have a lot of influence and they had to figure out what is it that we actually want to do and what we don't?
hmm, interesting point. Now that you mention, I kind of forgot that Egypt always to me just seemed to be doing its own thing over to the side.
Hmm.
But now that you mention it, yeah, they were trading with people in the interior of Africa, and also we know that especially in the earlier years, well, even until the Romans, there were lakes in parts of the Sahara that were some of the largest freshwater lakes in the world. So uh, just imagine all the civilizations that were around at that time that we just don't know about anymore.
Or they got merged into current ones, and unless you know what to look for, because again, that's the other problem is,
Mhm.
did the people figure out writing, or who had access to writing, who
Yeah.
wrote stuff down? We have the benefit of yeah, the Egyptians made these wonderful vaults of knowledge called tombs, where they even put their dead in there for us to figure out, what they were like, and even put food in there so we could see what was in the food that they ate at the time. I mean, we have all of this knowledge because they themselves, it wasn't their aim, but they themselves made a point of preserving it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good point. Um, so, going back to cults a little bit,
Mhm.
we certainly have seen, the Akhenaten cult,
Yes.
and cults. It seems like every time there is let's say, a religion that kind of dominates an area, um, you're going to find people forming cults. Um, and I'm kind of wondering if you have any theories why. Is it simply like a power move where people are like, well, I should be the one that everybody comes to for worship of that god? Or is it, that they're kind of crazy and like, well, this god speaks to me, so therefore I'm doing things different?
Really good question. My knowledge is mostly on that front, is mostly around um, Roman, actually, not
Mhm.
some yes, Greek, because that dovetails in, but more the Greco-Roman, period, um, but also, somewhat getting into the Middle East, but not necessarily getting into Egypt, because Egypt's cults are different than what I'm gonna say. For a lot of it, my knowledge of cults in the ancient world seems to be the mainstream method of worship or appeasing the gods or whatever isn't working for whatever reason. I'm still unhappy. My crops are failing. My cow is not giving milk. My brother went off to war and now he's dead. And there was a storm the other day and it blew the roof off my house. It's just you, I am unhappy with life in the world that I am in, and no matter how much I pray to these gods, um, I am still unhappy. Oh, look, here's somebody who says that we have it all wrong. Try it this way, or do XYZ. Oh, hey, my day is ever so slightly better because I have met this person. I think they have the better idea. So it's the bit of if it doesn't work, you go and find something that's better.
All right,
And
makes sense.
those people may or may not have your best interest at heart. They may legitimately think that they are giving out knowledge, like a Pythagoras. He
Mhm.
genuinely thought he was giving out really good knowledge, and as far as math goes, he was great. As far as I think it's legumes he was worshiping, not so much, but but yeah, it's cults were more prevalent and popular back then because you did have the benefit of isolationism where they could squirrel themselves away and form little pockets, but you also had a lot of discontent in the ancient world. I brought up the Romans. uh, where the Romans conquered, they brought a lot of good things to the people and they brought a lot of hardship to the people. It all depended on where you fell and on the spectrum of things. And for those people who were not very happy that the Romans were there, they would start forming cults, to counteract
Mhm.
the Roman way of worship, to go back to their ancient ways, to find new ways. They would do something that was not to the people I'm pissed at.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So,
Um, it seemed to me too that there are always the cynical people who will do it for self-aggrandizement,
mhm,
I guess you'd say, which kind of leads me into my other area of questioning, which is
okay.
witches. Now, traditionally, witches, if we're being a little charitable, would say that they trade their soul, they trade something in order to get magic powers.
Mhm,
Um, and of course, some of that was just women who had a lot of knowledge of like herbs and um, sort of more. I hate to say the way things work. There's a better word to describe it, but I'm totally blanking on it. Um, but they're always like throughout history, throughout every culture, you can always see witches. Um, do you, what led it to be that to that sort of women trading XYZ thing for power?
well, that's a big one to unpack. Well, because the tradition of the wise woman who knows shit has been around forever. And you could say that anybody who deals in herbs and things that come from nature, especially if they are unknown to the majority of the village or the group, and they don't die, you could wonder, had they traded something in order for these magical secrets of either healing or causing harm, like for poisoning or other things like that. um so there's that, like, in the 1500s, yeah, the 1500s. Though you're supposed to go to the church if you're not feeling well, have the priest or maybe even the monks tend to you if you're not feeling well. Basically, you're putting your life in God's hands. Um, a lot of people don't have time for that because they have to get back out into the fields. So you'd go to the local, wise woman of your village, and she might make a brew of crushed worms. Was always a frequent thing that they would use. Or, like, say your throat is feeling a little sore,
Mhm.
instead she would make you a necklace of worms, and you would
Hmm.
wear that around your neck. And when it falls off, that's when your cough or whatever is supposed to have gone away. Today that sounds like witchcraft, but back then that was just medicine.
Yeah.
So you have that. I will say though that in the 1490, yeah, 14, I'm going to say 1490, a German Catholic clergyman, Heinrich Kramer, wrote the book, please forgive me, I'm going to slaughter this, the Maleficarum,
Uh-huh.
which translates to the Hammer of Witches.
Yes.
And okay, you're familiar with this.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, for those of you who don't know, this is one of two books that determined what made a witch. What to look for, what to see the signs of witchcraft or be, and how you can tell if you're dealing with your village wise woman, or if you're actually dealing with someone who deals with the devil. The other book is Demonology
Mhm.
by the King James in the 1500s. And I love the Maleficarum because uh, there's one of the stories in there where it's warning, specifically young men, but men in general, that a witch will try to run off with your member.
Yeah.
And they will try to cut it off, and they will run off. They will run into the woods, and if you happen to chase them down and find them, they are adding it to basically a penis tree. And there's a story in there of one young man who so eloquently pled for his penis back that the witch who took it said, "Okay, fine. Just take whatever one from the tree that you like, but don't take that big one. That one belongs to the priest."
Um, for anyone who's interested in this kind of topic, I don't know if you know a channel called Esoterica. Um,
I actually just came across it today. I didn't
oh,
watch much of it, but I
fantastic
I
channel.
I, I did come across it.
They did an episode a couple of years ago about the guy who wrote Malleus Maleficarum, and like the guy was just totally insane to the point where like the church was like, "Yo, we gotta back off this."
Yeah, Heinrich Kramer was he was interesting. It's actually very kind of telling that this book endured because of how, even the church was kind of like, well, maybe we shouldn't be so hasty. But the fact that it did become like the template for citing witches. Uh, Actually, it's very interesting, all the different sources and books. There's a book, I don't have the name of it, but the author is It's either Montag or Montague,
Mhm.
depending on who you talk to, but his last name is Summers, and he was actually from, the United States, from, the, early 1800s, very soon after, we became a nation. And he wrote a book on vampires. He wrote two books on witches, and the one on witches he cites the Malice a lot. He also wrote a book on werewolves, and he was basically our Solomon Kane. He went
Nice.
across baby United States, purging it of all of these horrible denizens of evil. So
That's awesome. But sort of getting back to witches for a second,
Mhm.
I can definitely see how a lot of it would be jealousy, because you're right. I don't know about the worm necklace. That's the first time I've heard of that one, but especially with a lot of the herbal stuffs, like yeah, you were supposed to go to the church, but there were doctors back then, and
Yeah,
if especially if these women are taking their business, or they're getting better results. And the other problem too is like if you even now if you go to Chinese medicine, doctors like a lot of the old school ones, especially in China, like they just won't tell you what they're giving you. They have like secret, like secret formulas, secret techniques. Like I knew a guy in Arcadia, California, who did infertility with women, and he had a money back guarantee that women would get pregnant with a boy.
oh, whoa.
And I've never heard of anyone saying he paid out.
Uh,
But I was like, "Well, what do you do?" He's like, "I'm not telling you," you know. But I could definitely see that being, especially when you get into the medieval ages.
mhm.
I could see that being a problem for the witches because, of course, you're not gonna open up your secrets. Everybody's got to pay you some money to get these formulas and herbs and whatnot.
Exactly, especially when it's something that people can just find, in the woods, and, you
Yep.
just have to know what you're looking for, or, a lot of things, it's like, "Well, I have this weed growing in my yard." It's like, "No, that's actually a very, valuable, medicine."
Yeah.
So, well, also there's the other problem of, um doctors, air quotes, um, they themselves hype themselves up that they have special powers, or that they
Oh yeah.
have, special healing abilities, and they may or may not actually know what they're talking about, where and then they'll charge exorbitant rates where you can just go down to the local wise woman, and she'll make you a chamomile tea, and that'll set you right,
Yeah.
the wise woman, as you mentioned, is competition, and this is a very common thing. I mean, like you mentioned, uh, you know, Chinese medicine. A lot of people are going back to herbal remedies rather than
Hmm.
pharmaceuticals because A, it's cheaper, and B, a
Hmm.
lot of them work better than pharmaceuticals do.
Yeah.
Uh, and there's a book you can get that kind of very well illustrates this. It's just entitled Secret Remedies. It's put out by, uh, it's a public domain book, but the original printing was from the British Medical Association of 1909. And what happened was, during the Victorian era, you had all of these pharmacies claiming,
Mhm.
"Oh, we have remedies for this and that, whatever ails you." Usually things like losing your hair, or gout, or, upset stomach, or your um, problems in the bedroom. Everybody had their own concoction and their own remedies for all of these things. But as we were discussing, these pharmacies would keep it very quiet what was going into their remedies. And
Yeah.
most of the pharmacists, they didn't even have a license. They didn't have licenses for being a pharmacist back then. So
Yep.
you don't know if they're actually giving you, grandma used to be the wise woman and they're giving you grandma's ancient recipe, or they're just making it up because they can. So the British Medical Association went from town to town and forced the pharmacies to give them all of the recipes and said,
Oh,
no, 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 you will give us your recipe or we will shut you down. And once they got all of the recipes, they published them, and you can buy that book. I got my copy off of Amazon. And, it's
nice.
amazing how many things contain stuff like arsenic.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Arsenic,
it's,
lead.
hmm yeah, arsenic, lead, yeah, or you'd get, just normal things. It's like, oh, it's got wheat germ. Okay, that's it. But,
Um, yeah, that, um, it always disappoints me though in modern people because they always, the ones that want to go for herbal medicines, they never look at the part where they're also very deadly in many cases,
hmm
um, which is a problem. But yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if you're aware of the history of medicine in the U.S., but in the 1890s, most um, universities that had doctor courses to be a doctor, basically,
hmm
they were teaching herbal medicines, and especially they were teaching a lot of stuff from China at the time. And there was sort of dual tracks because you had that, and you had the new chemical-based pharmaceutical medicines that were coming out at that time.
hmm
And then that lasted until about 1910, when you had the Ford Foundation and some others where, or sorry, not the Ford, Rockefellers,
hmm
where they basically invested in all these pharmaceutical companies. So they started paying the universities to get rid of all the herbal medicine stuff. Uh, and that, oh, that's old, that's no good. And also in the general culture, like, science was the new hotness, so people are like, yeah, I want the new hot thing, not the thing my grandma gave me that
hmm
actually worked. So that's how we ended up with pharmaceutical medicines being the predominant form of medicine in this country.
I'll admit, my knowledge of medicine of that time period is more on the surgery side.
Mhm.
Specifically, I read a wonderful biography of uh, Mumler, Mumler, um, who basically is the godfather of modern day surgery. Because and what I mean by that is, this is the time period that we're talking 1840s. This is the time period of the surgery theater. It was a spectacle to go and watch somebody get kidney stones cut out of them,
Mhm.
and they of course did it without anesthetic. And what he did was he started taking um, patients who were thought to be lost causes, specifically those who had what we would today call cosmetic problems, cleft palate, burns. Maybe they were in a horrible accident and they are somewhat disfigured, and he pioneered the process of treat them like people. Treat them like people, prepare them for the surgery, because again, they were gonna have to have the surgery done without anesthetic. So he would, get them prepared and kind of put them through trial runs of what the pain was gonna be like, and as a result, they were more calm, the pain didn't affect them as badly, they were able to get everything done in one sitting without multiple trips, and his survival rate was astronomical compared to all the other surgeons of the time. And it's because of techniques like that and his ability to learn the human physiology, because the people were more relaxed for him, that his students learned more about human anatomy, and they were um, indispensable during the Civil War as field surgeons.
Hmm. Interesting.
So, because they had already been taught how to practice on people who didn't have painkillers, because as we know with the Civil War, most people did not have morphine.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So,
Ah, interesting.
his book is absolutely fascinating. There is a museum to him at the Philadelphia Museum of Medicine, Philadelphia University of Medicine, where he's got all of his oddities. He would collect disfigured babies and other medical oddities, and they still have his collection there.
Cool.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and that actually reminds me in Pasadena, California. There's I can't remember the name, but there's a street with really old houses from
Oh,
the late 1800s to early 1900s, and
yeah.
one of them was a doctor's house, and it's all set up with all the equipment that he would have had, and like tinctures, and the I don't think essential oil is the right word, but basically you can steam out the oils from a plant, and they had jars, full of that stuff sitting there, and you
Distilled, distilled.
distilled. Thank you, that is the word.
Yeah.
But it was interesting to see how much. Like, okay, here's geranium, here's dandelion, and all sorts of things that these were standard for doctors back then.
Mhm. Well, what actually makes me a little sad, but people are stupid, so I understand why, is how monkshood was a very common thing that would be in any healing person's
Mhm.
collection. It's just, you know, monkshood is belladonna. It's poisonous.
Yeah,
So nowadays, yeah, normal people shouldn't touch it because they'd be stupid. But back then,
yeah.
people
Well,
had more of a respect for the plants and what they were doing.
yeah, and it's also a processing method that's still used in Chinese medicine, but it's you have to boil it for over 60 minutes to get rid of the toxic effects.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I had always heard it being used as a topical.
I think you could. There's so different herbs are processed different ways. Some are,
Mhm,
I would say, the average is to boil it. There's others that you basically soak in alcohol, like high proof alcohol.
mhm, for a
Uh,
tincture.
Yeah, for tinctures. But then there's also some that you would basically burn in a like a dry pan. You would do it until it chars, and then you crush that up into dust. And then there's honey fried, vinegar fried, all sorts of different processing methods.
Oh, cool. I'll admit I briefly got into that processing, but I was having a hard time finding books that were reliable. So
Mm.
I just kind of gave up.
Yeah, I mean the methods are pretty good, but I don't know how they would have done it
Mhm,
for Europeans.
mhm.
I'm like, there's only so many ways that you could potentially process herbs. It's got
Yeah.
to be one of them. But since different processing methods have different effects on herbs, I can't say what the Europeans were trying to do with them. I guess if you knew
Well,
what kind of conditions they were trying to treat, then you could sort of like reverse engineer it.
Actually, that reminds me. I go hiking a lot in the deserts in Arizona, where I live, and so I've been learning a lot about the different plants here and how many of them have medicinal purposes.
Mhm.
And I would say most plants out here you use for things like if you have diphtheria. They're always, things like
Yeah.
that, or, if you, are you constipated or are you running and you need to get bound up? That's what almost all of the plants here are used for. But
Mm.
going with what we've been talking about, there's one plant I can't recall what it's called, what the name of it is, but the flowers have medicinal purposes.
Mhm.
The bulb, the roots, has medicinal purposes. The stem is deadly. So, what did it take to learn that you can eat the roots and you're fine, you can eat the flowers and you're fine, but the stem will kill you?
You know, I've always wondered that. There's a story in ancient China of a guy named Shen Nong, who
Mhm.
was one of the immortals, and he had an invisible stomach. So like he could see what he would eat, and he went around and he ate every plant and figured out which ones. Since he was immortal, he couldn't die, so he'd basically kill himself by eating poison, and then he would come back to life. Um, so they say he's the one who figured out what these plants did and discovered tea as well.
Oh, okay.
Uh,
Oh, I used to go to a tea house, a Chinese tea house, not a I mean, there was a Japanese one too, but, a Chinese tea house, in San Diego, and they
ooh,
had they would do the full thing of, washing the cup and
mhm.
everything, like, 3 or 4 times, but they would have a what they called a tea pet, and it was supposed to be the deity who invented tea sitting there on top of the tray. So I'm guessing that's the same deity. He didn't have a clear stomach though,
Sadly,
but
they don't make those, but
no, but it's just like, oh, putting connections together. It's like that's neat.
yeah, there's a lot of that stuff that's connected. The interesting thing is that there were probably a group of nomads called Shennong uh, in the far, far back ancient days, like 3000 BC or so, or sorry, not 3000, more like 2000 BC.
Mhm.
And the theory is that because they were nomads, like they would get different plants from different places based on when they would travel there, so that they had like more medical knowledge than anyone else around because they traveled so widely.
No,
But
that would make sense.
it's a
And
theory.
also, you know, they could have helped the spread of certain plants,
Oh,
around.
for sure, for sure. Because why wouldn't you want those plants in all the areas that you're going to be?
Exactly. You don't wanna
Uh,
have to, like, travel 200 miles to go get this one plant when you need it now.
so I had a question about modern witches. I think you are famous for your love of the movie The Craft.
Oh god, yes. Yes,
Um,
yes.
so I am kind of curious, what sort of drives people to witchcraft today? Is it the same as it's always been? Is there something a little different?
I am going to speak for myself
Hmm.
because I don't feel comfortable giving generalities,
Okay.
so much, for myself. Now, I full disclosure, I currently do not consider myself a witch in any way, shape, or form. But when I was in high school, okay, in junior high, I saw the craft, and before that, um, I grew up with a mother who was into Wicca. I was also going to a Lutheran school at the time. So I was going to a Lutheran school. I had a mother who was into Wicca and witchcraft. I'm not going to say the occult because that's something different. And my father was an atheist, if anybody wanted to know. So yeah, I was getting all sorts of different messages. And my mom's best friend is or was a Buddhist nun. So all sorts of different things.
Hmm.
Um, for me, I went through that phase in my adolescence where yeah, I wanted to throw off the shackles of everything that I had been taught before because, because I know better now, damn it. And and one of the big things that I was rebelling against was the Lutheran upbringing. So I went full bore into Wicca. I'm going to say something that's not popular, and your listeners, if they have opinions on this, you do not have to agree with me. That is perfectly fine. Wicca is not witches. I'm sorry. Wicca is not real witchcraft. Wicca is not real occult worship. Uh, Gardnerian Wicca specifically, uh, Gardner being the founder, is all about being hippies in the woods and being naked and dancing under the stars, having adult exploits and drinking wine. That's pretty much what it really is. I'm very sorry for those of you out there who may disagree with me, but that's what it is. It's not druidism. It's not. It's not real paganism. It's LARPing. But I had to go through that period by myself to figure that out. Um, but it's also because of that period where I dabbled that I did learn what real witchcraft is, what real nature worship is, and I realized it's not for me. I know enough to not mess with that because whether you actually believe that you're dealing with spirits or forces of nature, whether you really believe that you're dealing with nature gods, um, or whatnot, it does open up something in your mind and it does unleash stuff, whether it's psychological or metaphysical, it does actually do it. So I'm like, I know enough not to mess with this.
Not a bad a bad way of thinking, I suppose.
Mhm,
Um, I am kind of curious. What what draws a certain how would you say it? Like the hippies and whatnot. Like
mhm,
what draws them to the Wiccans? I mean, I understand the orgies, okay, but like there, you know what I'm talking about. There's a certain type
mhm.
of person who's really drawn to that. What do you think it is?
Well, to put it bluntly, I'm gonna say enjoying feeling daring and like you're
Mm,
being dangerous, and
okay.
also reveling in debauchery. Because when you look at real pagan worship, and my best friend is a druid. Um, when you look at the real stuff, there's none of that. It is all reverence and all understanding that you are dealing with elements that can mess you up in one way or another. And you don't take it lightly and you don't think that it's a fun frolic through the woods. Yes, of course, there's always a time and place for the fun frolic in the woods, but you have to know when that time and place is. It's not all of the time. It's not every day. It's not every um, ceremony. It's not every rite. The other problem I personally have with Wiccans or modern day pagans is the lopsidedness of their reverence to the deities. Now, if you're just going to worship nature in as a whole and it's asexual, okay, fine. But a big part of uh, being of pagan worship is the recognizing of the male and female aspects, and a lot of modern day pagans don't recognize the male aspect, and that was actually something I had a real problem with even when I was in high school. Because all of the books that I was reading, they're like, oh, you're worshiping the goddess and the triple moon and, Mother Maiden Crow, all this other stuff. And I'm like, well, what about, the god? You have to have a male to be opposite female. And it's like, oh, yeah, well, the hunter's there. It's like, the hunter's there, or it's like, well, he only really exists when you're going to have a Samhain ritual. Samhain being Halloween, because that's when his aspect is killed. And it's like,
Mhm.
that kind of seems unfair. That he only is important for that one night. It's like, well, no, then there's also Beltane where you have the maypole. It's like, yeah, but most pagans I've ever met, even with Beltane, with the spring, even when you have the maypole being the phallus that you dance around, they still don't acknowledge the male aspect of that celebration. It's always still, oh, well, this is when, she gets pregnant and, spring comes and all this other stuff. It's like, I don't like this ignoring of the male aspect of the dichotomy of what this religion is supposed to be. You're supposed to have both. And that's another thing that turned me off on it, was just eh, a lot, not only the lack of reverence, but the lack of acknowledgement.
Yeah, I mean, I find that at least not that it's quite the same thing, but in Chinese medicine, there's like a certain class of people who get attracted to it, who are like real big into like a shamanistic
Mhm.
aspect, whereas like no, that doesn't really exist in actual Chinese medicine. And
Nope.
it's like anything you say, if you like, yeah, no, that's not gonna work. They'd be like, oh, your chi is so bad. I see your aura. I don't know what it is, but there's a certain type of person who like, they want an excuse to be right about something and an excuse not to take responsibility for their actions.
Mhm.
And it's always something that seems to be like, well, I'm extra special because I the mother crone loves me and not you, or something that sort of sets them apart.
That is absolutely correct. I mean, that kind of dovetails into a lot of my focus has been, especially of late, the spiritualism movement.
Hmm.
Um, as I said before, I don't consider myself a witch or anything like that, but it's the I know enough to know that there's stuff out there that's real, but I also know enough to know that there's a lot of charlatans and a lot
Yeah.
of people who fake it. And a lot of those fakers, they'll do exactly what you described. It's the, oh, well, the spirits talk to me and they tell me secrets. And so that makes me special. And it's like, no, no, they don't. They don't talk to you. They don't tell you secrets. You're not special. um, there's a camp in Maine that you can they open up the retreat in June, and then they close it again in September, and you can either rent a camping spot, or you can rent a cabin, or you can even purchase a cabin, and that's like your permanent cabin that you can go to every single year for these retreats. And what they do is they go up there and they have uh, workshops to get in touch with the spirit world, and then they will do channelings. And their
Mm.
method of channeling is something called table tapping. I'm so sorry. One of the most hilarious things I've ever seen in my entire life is people doing table tapping, because I'm used to seances where, somebody has like a Ouija board,
Hmm.
or they'll do um It's basically, they'll run through the alphabet and they'll wait for the spirits to like rap um, for what the letters are, and
Oh,
they'll do it that
uh-huh.
way. But that's how they'll do these communications. And so when I first heard about table tapping, that's what I thought it was. I thought that it was, the table would actually like bounce for what either like in Morse code or in some indication of, one bounce for yes, two bounces for no, stuff like that. No, table tapping is basically, and I'm going to call it as it is. So if there's true believers out there, I'm sorry, I don't believe you. You have one person who puts their hand firmly on the table and rocks it in such a way, and it's always a round table that it basically spins on its legs, and it basically you make the table dance. And I don't see how you communicate with anybody having this table dance, but that's what they do, and they swear that, the spirits are with them and that, they're giving them messages by dancing the table around the room. I don't get it, but it's one of the most hilarious things in the world. It's harmless, so I see no problem in people continuing to do this as long as they're not, like, spending their life savings on dancing tables. It's harmless, so I'm okay with it.
Mhm.
But, oh my god, it's like, you people really can't believe that you're talking to the dead with this, do you?
A lot of people buy that. And by the way, just for the chat, lest anyone think we're sort of just picking on women. I've seen the exact same phenomenon from
Mhm.
mostly men in martial arts,
Oh
especially
god.
if like kung fu communities. Like I've had people tell me, so I've done a lot of classes teaching Chinese medicine for sports injuries, for this and that, and I'll get people who are into kung fu and MMA and stuff, and like they'll tell me that like, oh, my chi is so good, I could jump 3 stories. Like, yeah, oh, okay, cool, let's see. Like, oh well, no, I can't do it now. But or they know how to do the death touch
Yep.
because their chi is so awesome. It's like, oh, okay. And they'll ask me like, "Oh, so you don't know how to punch a hole through a punching bag with your chi?" Like, no, no, I don't.
It
So
isn't it Death Touch the guy who had, advertisements in, basically comic books where, if you send him, like, like $5, he'll send you the secrets of the Death Touch or something like that? Or am I
probably, I mean, there's all sorts of legends about it, but what a lot of people don't understand is during the late 1800s, just like we would have, you think of like dime store novels in the US,
Mhm.
China had its own version of those. And they had like various popular things where kung fu warriors, and they would use chi to like be able to cut the wings off a fly, or jump 5 stories in the air or whatnot. And one of them was the death touch. So anytime you see like kung fu movies where it's like, and some other guy is like, oh, I have to do like this, and and in the neck, like that's what they're referencing. But all of that was like, it would be like if a Chinese person saw Iron Man 1 and they were like, "Oh my god, the US military is so advanced. They have these robotic suits." It's like all these Westerners who were in China at the time, they were reading these books and like thinking it was more than just entertainment.
It's kinda like, oh god. I know the style of writing you're talking about because it evolved into the modern day kung fu movies, just like how,
Yeah.
like, wuxias,
Wuxia, yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, they're the more dramatic
Uh-huh.
stories, but, oh god, okay. No, that makes sense. I always thought that the 5, finger death touch thing, was, a romanticizing of actually watching kung fu masters beat the crap out of people, because I've mentioned this guy an awful lot. I just remember his name was is Iron Fist, and I can't remember what his real name was, but he was the master in the book Iron and Silk.
Hmm.
And I mean, I've seen the real guy because Iron and Silk is a real story, and the real dude, his hand is just this, just this building of calluses upon calluses upon
Hmm.
calluses, and he is called Iron Fist because he punches an iron plate every day
Yeah.
at full speed. And that's how he got that hand. So it's like, yeah, I could see him like totally killing somebody with one punch with that hand.
Well, it's not the punch. It's just you're supposed to touch someone. Just
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and that's I mean, there are certain places on the body. There's like, the baroreceptor on the jugular,
Hmm.
where if you start rubbing it, someone will just pass out. Um, and there are certain places, that are nerve clusters that you can like paralyze someone's arm temporarily. But it's like it, it's like let's say a cop movie. People know that cops get in shootouts with criminals, but like if a cop has like a 6-shot revolver, and he shoots 20 guys diving through the air and he only gets shot in the shoulder, you know what I mean? That's like taking it up a notch. That's
Hmm.
kind of like the death touch. But have you ever heard of a guy named Tom Rousel?
No.
He's a Brit. He's a professor of like medieval literature or something, but he seems to be an honest to God pagan. Um, I
Okay.
know he grew up Catholic and then he found paganism. I tried to get him on my channel years ago, and it was like the most polite way anybody has ever told me to fuck off. Um, but like
Aw.
he has, well, no, he was like super sweet about it, but he was like, your I see you talk about comic books on your channel, and I find Thor comic books offensive to my god, so I won't be coming on.
Oh, really?
Uh, yeah, like he was super nice about it. Like I was like, oh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. I had all these questions, and like I gave him a bunch of examples, and he's like, yeah, no, 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 I'm not offended, but I'm not coming. But I didn't want to ask him like, well, would you go somewhere where they talk about movies, considering how offensive Thor: Love and Thunder was? Um, but at any rate, he seems to be part of a movement with some people who don't seem crazy. Like they actually seem to be trying to reconstruct the pagan religions, or some of them that died out in Europe. And so like he's got altars in his home where he puts out libations to Thor and Odin, and he'll do different worship ceremonies and stuff. And I thought it was pretty interesting considering he seems to be genuine in his belief about it. But he'd be an interesting guy. He does a lot of like European history, like based on scientific whatnots, and then he also does like a lot of cultural research. But
I see it looks like he has a documentary that came out in 2014 called
mhm,
From Runes, Runes, to
mhm.
Ruins, Ruins. And
He's
that's
got a few. He's got a lot of. I don't necessarily think they're. He calls them full documentaries, but he's got like half hour on um, like the not Ayurvedics, the like the Proto-Indo-Europeans who came from the steppe and went into India and became the Northern Indians. Um, like documentaries trying to like showing modern research on like yes, there is Caucasian DNA that went into northern India, and he's got different ones on Buddhism in Sri Lanka, and a lot of really interesting stuff.
well, that actually makes sense considering it was found that what we would consider Caucasian DNA is
Mhm.
Persian. So,
Yep.
so it would make sense, the Persians going into India.
Yeah, absolutely.
So cool. No, thank you. I'm going to check him out.
Yeah, he's definitely worth a follow. I mean, I don't necessarily believe everything, but he's very like professorial, very
Hmm.
analytic about it, and he gives sources, which I like as
Oh,
well.
yes.
Um,
Gotta love sources.
but as we are coming up on almost 2 hours,
Hmm.
um, let's for anyone who wants to find Kat and her work, 01 Publishing,
Hmm. That's correct.
uh, the website. Uh, Go check it out. And what's available on 01 Publishing now?
Right now, especially for those of you who are Lovecraft fans, we have two anthologies, Whispers from the Abyss 1 and 2. And then, of course, we have the graphic novel series, Case File Arkham, which is Raymond Chandler. Set in Lovecraft's Arkham, actually. So it's a detective stories set in Lovecraft's world.
Mhm.
Specifically, the first one, Nightmare on the Canvas. Our detective is investigating the disappearance of the artist Pickman. And for those of you who have read Pickman's model, you know that it's not going to end well.
Um, and there is also linked in the chat on Amazon if you prefer a Kindle version. Um, you can buy it, or if you have some sort of deal with Kindle, it looks like you can get for free.
Hmm. That is correct. It is available on Kindle Unlimited.
Nice.
Yep.
Uh, and then also, I believe you were going to be at a show in
Yes, yes,
Phoenix.
yes, indeed. In December of so the first week of December, we are going to be at the Horror Mongers show. It is, I do believe it is going to be in Phoenix, but I don't have the specific location yet. They haven't released that, but stay tuned. Go to 01publishing.com to find all the details once we have that information. As well, if you go to 01 Publishing Books on Instagram, we are always updating there as well.
Nice. Anything else we should know? Anything else
Um,
we should take a look at?
Oh, well, yeah, there's all sorts of different things. Of course, go to 01publishing.com. And if you go to Amazon, all of our books are available on Amazon as well. And if you want something that is nice and lighthearted and that is not scary, please read Scars. It is the
Hmm.
story of a fallen astronaut and his uplifted rat.
Yeah, it's a very nice story.
Mhm. Oh,
Um,
thank you.
not not horror at all, but quite nice,
Mhm.
heartwarming, if you will.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and for anyone who's interested, Kat and Ishi will both join me. Sorry, not next week. On the night of the night of October 30th. They will be back at midnight Eastern Time Zone, 9 p.m. for those of you in the West. And we are going to be doing top 10 HP Lovecraft stories. We have some other guests, John's Longbox. I saw him there in the chat. He will be here, and we will have a few others. And we are just going to have a good old time talking about what we like about Lovecraft and his stories.
I am seriously looking forward to this. I already have my stories picked out and I'm just, I'm itching for the chance to talk about them.
So if you're looking for an early morning Halloween spook fest, classic American horror literature, come on over and you see a bunch of goofballs talking about H.P. Lovecraft. And for those of you who may have forgotten, go back Empire of the Undying Sun while you can. We've got 2 more weeks left.
You need this. You really need this. And it's not just because I'm biased. You really do need this.
All right. Well, everyone, thanks for coming. Thanks to Kat, and thanks to Ishi for sparing you for an evening.
No problem. Thank you, everyone, for having me.
So, other couple quick announcements, which I totally forgot. We have tomorrow Nerd Council of Doom on the other channel, which is at the Nerd Council of Doom on YouTube. Myself, the Dungeon Delver, the Dungeon Minister, we talk about nerdy subjects. We will be talking about Wizards of the Coast's latest gay, trans, whatever promotional image that they put out. We have Canadian Thanksgiving. We also have certain people who have shock collars on their dogs. And there will be more to come. Also reviewing the upcoming Claricon gaming con in Ontario, Canada. So join us then. Next week, I've got Victor Gorchev, the Scrying Dutchman. We're going to be talking about differences between U.S. and European horror. And then on Thursday, I have any award winner, Rob from Pulp Hummock Press. We're going to be talking about how to write horror in tabletop games. So it's going to be a fun week. So thanks everyone for coming.